Remember when I said that I was going to make a video on a recommendation that you guys gave me? And do you remember how that was 3 months ago? Well, we're doing it now. The show that won out was one called Insomniacs Afterschool, and the recommendation came from... Your name is so complicated, dude. X Schwartzhopt 7235 was the one who made the recommendation. You also tried to recommend Great Teacher Onizuka, but unfortunately that's above the parameters I was looking for, and I'm already watching it, so expect a review on that sometime soon. Soon having the definition of Frerin levels of soon. It could be the next month, it could be the next 20 years. Anyway, Insomniacs Afterschool. The way that I'm going to do this is that I'm going to rate the show based on my own rating index that I have dubbed the MAHFF Index, which is an acronym for Music, Animation, Humor, Fan Service, and Feels. Yes, I know that it's ridiculous, but it's my review, damn it, and I do what I want. The music stands for music, obviously, because every good show has music. It's a fact of life. It's like an unwritten commandment that a good show has to have some pretty good soundtrack behind it. Animation stands for, obviously. I include humor in my ratings because a good show is going to be able to tell you a good joke, even if it's the most depressing show. Like, Your Lie in April is still able to deliver some pretty good jokes and punchlines. As sacrilege as it seems. But again, my rating system, I do what I want. The F stands for fan service, because... Alright, I never admitted to being a good guy. I am antagonish. I usually get enticed to a show because there's a cute girl in it, and this show just so happens to have one. So that's all you really need for me. Although, I will defend myself and say that not all fan service necessarily has to do with glistening thighs and bouncing breasts, so it could be as something as simple as a really adorable smile or puffy, pinchable cheeks. So that's what fan service also stands for. And the final F stands for feels, because the best shows are going to hit you right in the F-word center where you least expect it. And that's usually when I talk about any personal connection that I might have had, or any sort of feeling that was brought out of me at that point. So look forward to those when I open myself up to you. After the MAHFF Index, I want to get into some effects that the show has had on the community, because it has a greater tie to the Ishikawa Prefecture than I would have expected. So it just feels like a disservice to leave some of that out, and I want to explain some stuff. Then afterwards, I'll give my final thoughts, which is what I'd give the show out of 10, followed by what I hated, what I liked, and who I thought Best Girl was. So without further ado, let's get into Insomniacs Afterschool. Insomniacs Afterschool follows Ganta Nakami, who we later find suffers from insomnia brought about by PTSD. I won't tell you what it is, because I want you to see the show and find that out for yourself. Or don't. I'm not going to force you otherwise, but he's in class. He failed to fill up on those Flintstone gummies or his 5-hour energy, so he's about to conk out. He goes up to his school's observatory, and yes, the school has an observatory. You're just going to have to suspend your disbelief there. When he gets up there, he finds that his napping spot has already been taken by the token Genki girl, Isaki Maguri, who is already up there sleeping. So she wakes up, the two of them have a scuffle, and eventually come to the conclusion, you know, we could probably use this place to sleep. But the school won't allow us to do that, and they're right, because they eventually get caught. But they're given the idea that they can use the space for however they please if they make a club out of it. So the show from there becomes a episodic slice of life where these two sleep-deprived students try to rebuild their school's defunct astronomy club and also build a relationship with each other from there. And it's a really wholesome watch. The show is labeled as a romance. I'd say that it's more so along those lines of slice of life, but for any of you romance fans out there, you will not be disappointed, because it also has some really cute moments there as well. First up is the music, and I'll be first to admit it didn't really blow me away, but there were some moments when the music was perfect for the scenes that they were in. Now, I'm not expecting Freerin levels of soundtrack here. Like, I wasn't expecting them to go off with violins and brass. Like, it was something out of a shonen fight scene. Because it's not the show for that. It's a slice of life. It's supposed to be calm and chilling. And the music very much captures the tone that it's trying to set out. And I will go as far as to say it goes ham when it wants to. Kind of like how, and I'm going to explain this in the animation later, when there is a scene that really calls for an impact, they will impact it. And they have a pretty good soundtrack to boot for those moments. I will also say that the ED was pretty good. It captured the feeling of a night walk in a way that I haven't really... I really need some water. I wasn't a big fan of the OP. I wasn't a big fan of the opening, but I really liked the ED, because it captured the feeling of a night walk in a way that I didn't really see anybody else do. It just captures a feeling of serenity when you're walking out in the middle of the... out in the middle of the sticks where this show is located. I wouldn't really know about walking out in the sticks, but I have walked around my neighborhood at night before, and it's a calming feeling that this song captures. It's sweet. You should give it a listen. Moving on to the animation, we find that the leading animators for Insomniacs Afterschool is an animation studio called Linden Films. They're responsible for shows that you might have heard of before, like Tokyo Revengers, Yamada and the Seven Witches. I swear to God, they're still witches, even if they don't have the hats. And their most recent anime, Call of the Night, which, I say is their most recent one because I haven't heard of any other recent stuff that they've done. But those are some of the more popular titles. The animation in this one it's a unique art style, but I wouldn't particularly say that it's a pretty one. This is a tricky one, because it's one of those anime where the show, I wouldn't say, does the manga justice. Now, I haven't actually read the manga, but I've seen some panels after Googling them, and I have heard from many people who have given this show a review that the art in the manga is one of the most stunning works of art out there, and the author definitely deserves credit for the work that they do, and versely deserved a pretty good adaptation, which I think that the show does in moments that it wants to. It's very much like what I was talking about with the music earlier, where if there was a moment that the show needed to pull out all the stops for, and really cue out the good soundtracks, bring out the good animators, and wake the director up from his nap so that way he can do his job, they did it for the moments that counted. They did it for the moments that were most important. And that's where the animation shines. Because, for the most part, in a slice of life, you will usually get static shots just of characters standing still and trying not to move anything but their mouths and occasionally blinking every now and then, which is just the cycle of animation. That's just how that works. But there is some sakuga here and there, so the show does a good job at that, and I'd say that the animation was decent. It wasn't the best, but I'd also say that it wasn't the worst, and it also had a unique art style, so that's my summation. When it comes to the humor, I very much view that word in the same way that somebody might view tone, and tone is just about how an anime is presented, or like how anything is presented, really. It could be a dreary tone, it could be a comedic one, it could be a happy one, it could be a sad tone. It ranges from many an adjective, many an emotion. In this case, the tone in Insomniacs Afterschool was chill. It very much captured what to me felt like a night walk out in the countryside, and I got that pretty clearly throughout every episode that I watched. But I will say that in the humor department, it was fairly dry up until episode 5. Dare I say, in the first 5 episodes, it did its job of being laid back a little too well, because I can't really recall much of what happened in those first couple of episodes until episode 5. And for me to recommend something like that, I'll get into this a little later, but recommending a show that takes a couple of episodes to get good is not something that I usually recommend to people, not unless I know that they're really going to like it, because time is time, and let's say maybe about 2 hours worth of time for a show to get good is a lot to ask for, and even then it might not pay off. But here, at least, it started to get better as the episodes went on, and then eventually you got to a point where I let out a hearty wheeze at episode 11. I'm not going to say what happens, but as a relationship develops between the two characters, it becomes more focused on them, and things get pretty funny when they react or when they bounce off of each other. When the two leads are put together, that's when the show is at its best, I feel. So if it focused more on those two, I'd have more of an enjoyable time, but we had to introduce some side characters to try to flesh out as best we could before we can get to stories that just had the two. And while the show didn't get me to laugh, at least not until the second to last episode, what it did manage to do was get me to smile so hard that I couldn't wipe the grin off my face. It was something that made me happy to watch, and while it wasn't ha-ha funny, it was still something that made me think, yeah, it's worthwhile to sit here and watch this. Moving on to fan service. Don't expect many doujins from this one. That's all I'll say. It's not the prettiest art style, and you know what? Shame on you for thinking that every anime might need a doujin, because this one sure as hell doesn't, and it's adorable for not having been that way. You want fan service? You take a look at that cute girl's smile and you tell me that that's not fan servicey enough for you, because it's never good for you, is it? That nearly opened up a can of worms, but yeah, the fan service in this show comes from just how sweet characters are and how they interact with each other, and just it warms the heart. And speaking of heartwarming, the feels. Feels is where I get a little personal, and I just describe some moments that I thought were really good for the show. And the first one that I want to talk about is in episode 5. If you managed to watch the show, and you've stuck around up until that point, you come to a scene where the male lead is like sleeping in a tent. Sleeping, but he has insomnia, so he can't do it. But he's arranged a date, I'll say, with Magari to essentially leave the campgrounds because they were on a school trip and take some pictures of the night sky for the astronomy club. Now, when they do that, they meet up, and suddenly this strict, I guess, school-guided tour has become a fun trip. I'm gonna go off of memory here from what I remember, and it's not that good. Try to bear with me. But after they run into each other, the two of them head straight for the ocean, where they think that there is going to be a good shot to take a picture. And then the scenery changes to a more purplish night sky. It looks like an aurora borealis overhead. Magari starts running, taking Nakami in tow, and the two of them kind of dance around in the water. They yell, they laugh, and as soon as they get back to the shore, Magari, without worry that anybody from the campsite's gonna hear them, because I guess they're just sleeping too far away, lets out a really hearty ah, and it startles Nakami for a second. But the reason that she does it is because she says it feels really good to yell. And Nakami, who we saw up until this point, maybe he had a smile on his face every now and then, but you could tell he wasn't really enjoying himself. He begins to smile pretty hard, and then lets out a yell of his own, and the two of them start screaming together, and then keep going until their lungs run out of air. And they do it right in front of each other, and they try to see how long they can go. It's a really wholesome scene that, to me, brought back a memory back when I was in high school. Now, my high school days, I don't really remember a lot of, because I just didn't like them. But I do remember one thing that I did that was pretty amusing. Now, we were on a school field trip to Washington, D.C., and a good friend of mine at the time, he goes into the public bathroom. As soon as he came out of the public bathroom, he tugs me on the shoulder and says, "Hey, Austin, there's a coat that somebody left in the bathroom. we're going to go back later and we're going to go pick that up and see if it's still there. So I just nod my head going, yeah, sure, all right, yeah, it sounds like fun. And lo and behold, 45 minutes later, under the cover of darkness, or because the sun had just gone down, he pulls me aside again and says, all right, let's go get it. And my eyes widen as I think, oh my god, no, he's serious? No way, dude. Like, what if we get caught? Like, there's a tour guide right there. We can't just split up from the group. And he says, no, it's okay. We're going to go to the public bathroom, and we'll come back. They'll never even notice we were gone. So, one way or another, he convinced me to go with him. He talked me into it. So, we split off from the group when nobody noticed that we were, I think we were in the back of the line, but we split off from the group. We went to the bathroom, and guess what wasn't there? The coat that he wanted. So, a bit in vain. We try to run back to our group, but they're nowhere to be found. We are loose on the streets of DC for like 15 minutes until we get a glimpse of them across the reflecting pool at the Lincoln Memorial. So we run over there fast as we can, and we're able to catch up with the group. Luckily, the tour guide had to use the bathroom, or our chaperone had to use the bathroom. I said he was a tour guide, but he was our chaperone. And he didn't notice that we were gone. And it didn't look like the other kids in our group noticed that we were gone either. So take that read as you will. But I remember coming back there, sharing a sigh of relief, going, holy crap, dude, how did we get away with that? And I didn't really stop to consider how fun a moment that was until watching a scene like this reminded me of that memory and how a time when me and a friend of mine broke the rules, we had a good time, and it carried with us a memory that we, at least I don't know if he remembers it, but it carried with us a memory that we could take with us to this day. And like I said, my memory is terrible. I can't remember a lot of stuff that happened, but I do remember that. And the reason that I think that I remember it so fondly is because we were doing something that we definitely should not have done, and we had a good time doing it. Which is kind of the same thing as what's going on here with Nakami and Maguri, who split off from their school group when they're not supposed to, especially since they're a boy and a girl. But God forbid they meet up in the middle of the night. Who knows what they could get into. They could do some unprotected premarital hand-holding for all we know. But they end up having a really nice time. The scene in question that I'm talking about, it's just one of those where they pulled out all the stops to make it work. So the music goes off, the animation's really good, they do some Sakuga in there, and afterwards they take a picture of the night sky. It's beautiful, and they do their best to capture the artwork of the manga, and it just feels nice to watch. It's hard to put into words because I feel like my words are just so unworthy to describe what I was watching, but I felt at ease watching a scene like that. It felt comfortable watching these two. It felt happy watching these two interact with each other in such a wholesome way. What I have in my hands is a spoonful of sugar. I can not only confirm that wasn't a good idea, but I can also confirm... Oh, it kind of tastes like cotton candy. Oh, anyway, what I can also confirm is that the scene that we just watched is 10 times sweeter than this ever was. Yeah, there goes my workout today. Like, the foundation of what sugar is made out of. It's cute! It's so cute! The fan service is coming back to me now. Oh my god. God, it's, real life was never meant to compete with this. We're running out of sugar. The second scene that got me was in the latter half of the show, where the show is getting better, and the two main leads, they're on their own personal field trip with each other. They brought a third, but the third realized that they were a third wheel, and they left, leaving our two leads together. And that's when, after a heart-to-heart that the two characters have, their relationship gets better, and they end up having to cut the trip short because the girl, Marguerite, her parents found out that she was staying with a guy, and they weren't very appreciative of that because, again, unprotected premarital handholding bylaws, and they have to clean up. So she's pretty distraught about the whole thing, but the guy, Nakami, who, keep in mind, we only knew as an introvert from episode 1, who we slowly started to see change up till that point, decides, you know what, we're gonna clean up because your parents don't want us to stay here. That said, I'm kidnapping you. So we're leaving this town and we're going somewhere else. Now, it's not like he's literally pulling a fireworks, like the movie Fireworks, where he kidnaps the girl and they run away together and then they never see the parents again. No, it's one of those where the boy gets a really weird idea, or the boy gets a funny idea to run away, and the girl's like, yeah, let's do it! And it's done in an adorable way. I really liked that scene because we got to see a character that we saw as an introvert in the beginning grow steadily, and then it all comes to a head when he finally starts calling the shots, I'll say, and he does something that puts a smile on the girl's face as they run away together. The two of them form a genuine bond that I believe can only come from meeting somebody that your soul just resonates with. I don't know if I consider myself a spiritual person, but I am a big fan in that belief that there are people out there that are just meant for you. There are people that your soul just resonates with, and it's only by meeting those people, finding and running into those people, that both of you can become something even greater than yourselves. Just growing into people that you never thought that you could become and be better, which is exactly what I feel like this show exemplified when it had these two characters meet up. Because it's not just Nakami who goes through this character development. Marguerite also, to an extent, becomes more open, because you find that she has, again, I want to avoid spoilers here, but she's putting up a front. She does the tragic Genki girl thing. So she goes through her own little development as well, and it ends up being a satisfying payoff towards the ending. It mostly just makes me feel disappointed that the first couple of episodes just didn't really hit it for me and just came across as boring. Now, that's just me. I'm a YouTuber. I'm like the lowest form of opinion, so you don't have to listen to me. But the show needed to take off at an earlier point for me to really get invested in what was going to happen. I'm glad that I finished it, but I'm kicking at myself knowing that if I didn't have the obligation to finish the show, maybe I wouldn't have watched it. Or like maybe I wouldn't have finished it out. But I'm glad that I did. And that's all that I can really say to try to convince you to watch it. That's a lot more feelings than I meant to talk about, and I kind of just spilled into what my final thoughts were going to be, but I'll try to sum those up as best I can. This is already a really long video, so I'm going to try to sum it up as best I can here. And with that, we move from the MAHFF Index onto the effect on the community that the show has had. Insomniacs Afterschool was written by Makoto Ojiro, who is a veteran in the industry who's created some other works before, but Insomniacs Afterschool is probably her most famous one. It started in 2019 and ended in 2023, which currently stands at a mouse score of, I want to say 8.5, but it's definitely pretty high up there and is considered a really good read, with some really good artwork. And after I googled a couple of the panels, I can honestly say that the anime here doesn't really do these panels a justice. They do their best, but looking at these things firsthand, it's clear that a lot of passion went into the work. Insomniacs Afterschool, the anime adaptation, would come out the same year as the final volume's release, and would also inspire a live-action movie that got created that same year. So, lots of stuff on Makoto Ojiro's plate that I can only applaud from my chair. So, bravo. The show itself takes place in the village of Nanao, which is a rural spot in Japan, in the Ishikawa Prefecture, which, if you didn't know, was like that tiny little peninsula that sticks out of the left side of the country. The town and the prefecture might sound familiar because on January 1st, New Year's, 2024, the town and the prefecture in general were hit by a 7.6 magnitude earthquake that took the lives of 260 people, injuring thousands and displacing tens of thousands of people. So that left a lot of people homeless. Equally tragic because the traditional festival that they would have for New Year's was something that they would have to postpone. So in walks Insomniacs Afterschool. Using the show's IP, they wanted to hold a festival that acted as a sort of fundraiser for the victims of the quake, as well as helping those who were still displaced to try to get them in better living conditions. And overall, it seems to be doing a lot of good over there. It's just another example of anime being a positive force of good in the world, and I really can't get enough of stories like that, because it's not all the shonen action sequences, it's not all the fan service, it's not all the negativity that it's made out to be, because every now and then you come across a story of these otaku, these weebs, these absolute nerds coming together and actually being a force of good in the world, and you never get enough of stories like that. It's really wholesome to see. And the site itself is still up. They're going to continue taking relief donations up until April of 2025, which I hope they get all the money that they need. I wanted to get more on information regarding tourism because I know that they ended up taking a train and giving it they gave it the Demon Slayer treatment. They put stickers on the train that gave it an Insomniacs Afterschool pattern, and I couldn't find much more info on that. Nor could I find a lot of info on the tourism, but I've definitely seen in my Instagram just posts of cardboard cutouts and different travel lodges and cabins having these cardboard cutouts and these posters hung up. So I know that it exists. I just can't track it down. And if anybody has any information on that, I'd like to know. This leads me into my final thoughts about the show, which I had already kind of just dumped on you, but I can reiterate it now as best I can. What I didn't like about the show was the first couple of episodes before hitting episode 5, because it was just boring. It is a hefty time commitment, and it's the reason why I don't really recommend a show like this unless I am sure that you are going to like it yourself, or at least that you're willing to hang on for it, because like I said, time is time. Like, it is not something to be wasted on a show that you don't think is going to be good. The other thing that I didn't really like about the show were the side characters, and I'm in the minority here, because apparently everybody really liked them, or at least people who watched the show, who are fans of the show, also really liked them. But to me, they kind of just came across as bland, and they didn't really do anything special for me to remember them. I don't even remember their names all that well. Not even the name of the best girl that I voted, which when I tell you, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for it, and people might get mad at me, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's not the author's fault, because I'm told that the manga fleshes out these characters a lot better, and it also just kind of gives them something to do. In this case, the show has them exist, and for me, the reason that they exist is just to show that these characters aren't loners. The two main leads, I mean, Nakami has a friend that he hangs out with, so he's an introvert, but he's not a social outcast. And Maguri also has her own friend group. She's not just alone. And it's also good to have some other characters, because It's good for the story. But like I said, the show was at its best and also at its funniest when it was just the two leads interacting with each other. So whenever the side characters were on screen and telling jokes that didn't really get me to laugh all that much, maybe it got me to smile but didn't really get me to laugh, it just felt, you were edging me here. I'm trying to get to the good stuff. Leave so that way the two main characters can interact. Please do me that kindness. Dare I say, I will also give the show credit and say that I have the attention span of a squirrel. So, what I mean by that is, you're gonna need to grab my attention in episode 1 if you want me to keep watching. And that's very short-sighted, I know, but other shows have been able to do it in the past, like Attack on Titan, Sword Art Online. I know that's like a really bad example, but it had a good beginning. So much so that it made me want to watch the rest of it, which I don't recommend. I recommend you watch this over Sword Art Online. Those are the only two things that I didn't like. The first couple of episodes and the characters. Because afterwards we get into the stuff that I do really like, which I already described in some pretty good detail with that high school story of mine. And that's the scenes in the show that felt real. Scenes like Magari and Nakami breaking the rules and having some fun on the beach just seems so real to me, and that's like the voice actors crushed it. That's another thing that I want to add. Everybody from the voice actors to the animators to the director just crushed it with the kind of tone that they wanted to set for the show, and it shows, especially with scenes like that one in episode 5, because I personally believe that it's moments like those that we are going to remember the fondest. Moments where we bend the rules a little bit just so we can have a good time, and we look back on those moments hopefully not with the regret that we did anything too bad, but with fond memories, knowing that we decided to go against the grain and we had a good time doing it. Insomniacs Afterschool wasn't a show that made me burst out loud laughing, but it was a show that got me to smile pretty hard, and after finishing it, it felt really good to do that. Finishing the show kind of felt like finishing a classic, like Death Note or Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Just watching something that you know you're never going to see again, or at least never going to see recreated again, because it exists in a field that feels special. It's weird because it does feel like any sort of token romance or slice of life, but the way that it's done feels so chill in a way that my own words can't describe, that I feel sad to see it go. And this is coming from the guy who was bored at the first couple of episodes, who might have dropped it had he not had the obligation to watch this for a video that he was going to create. That's bizarre to me that a show could, I don't want to say save itself in its latter half, because that's not accurate, but how a show could still feel really gratifying and really change one's perspective. Probably should have written a script or something about how I felt after I finished it, because I maybe finished it about 3 weeks ago, and I kind of just let you know what I felt about the show off of memory. But I do remember after finishing, I went to the bathroom, I know, TMI, and I wanted to write down what I was feeling. So I grabbed my phone and I wrote down what I felt after finishing the show. This is about maybe 3 minutes after walking away from the computer, and I have this to say. Now, it's on my phone, and I'm using that to record, so I'm just going to use my Miku clipboard, and I wrote down what I said on it. I know it's Nino, but Miku's on here, I promise. See, there's my waifu. Watching it made me feel complete in a rare way that other shows can't give me. It came in, told its story, and left. Not with a bang, but with an actual ending. It did nothing phenomenal, it wasn't showy, it was natural from beginning to end. It was a slice of someone's life. And I'd say that those thoughts really sum up how I feel about the show. I would give this show an 8 out of 10 on Mal, and I'd also say that it was not bad. I enjoyed the show, and giving it a comment such as not bad I wouldn't really view so much in it. It has a bit of a negative connotation to it. Like, say somebody cooks you dinner or something, you eat it and you say, it's not bad. That seems insulting, right? Somebody once tried to describe a movie to me once and said that it was not bad. They really liked it, but they said it was not bad. So I asked them why they thought it was, why they didn't think it was great or use some other adjective. And the reason that they told me was because they didn't want to try to inflate the movie to get other people to think too highly of it. They wanted to give a word that would make you think, this thing actually has some problems to it, but it might be a pretty worthwhile story overall. And that's really the best compliment that I can give this show. Saying that it's not bad is me not wanting to sing its praises in a way that gets you to not take me seriously, but to instead put it in your head that, yeah, this show has problems, yeah, this show isn't perfect, but it could be perfect for you. The other thing that I wanted to mention was something else that I wrote down that I don't want to say off rip because it's not going to come across that well. And it's about how I believe the show is a symbol for soulmates being real, I guess. Or just that idea that there are people out there that your soul just resonates with. In regards to Insomniacs Afterschool, I'd like to think it's a story about what could happen if you meet the right person. We're not perfect, we have flaws that we struggle with and can't quite find the answer to. It's because we're so close to our issues that it takes someone else's perspective to put those issues in perspective and work towards fixing them. By meeting the right people, you can support each other in a way that you may not have thought possible. At its core, whether the intention of the author or not, I think that was the direction that she wanted to try to go towards with these characters. And I think that overall, Insomniacs Afterschool is not perfect, but it was certainly perfect for me. And if I might have convinced you to give it a watch, all the same, I hope that you are able to stick out the first 4 episodes until it starts to really get good. Art style might not be the prettiest, you might not go in for the doujin fan service that you were expecting, but it still is pretty good. Oh yeah, before I finish out, I should probably tell you my best girl. So the award for best girl in this show goes to Yui Shiramaru. Now, I completely forgot her name, and I had to write it down for this, but I like her. She's a camera nerd, and I took a couple of camera classes in college, so whenever she was trying to explain to the main leads how to use a camera, I knew exactly what she was talking about, and there are scenes where I guess the two leads are alone with each other, and she suspects that they're getting it on, or they're doing something inappropriate that they're not supposed to. So there's a scene where they're in a restaurant and they're eating shrimp or whatever. She takes the shrimp heads and then just, I guess, trying to mimic what she thought that they were doing, she just goes, you can give me hate for it, I don't care, but I think that Shiramaru was fun. Also, she owns an arcade, and I think that would be pretty fun. But anyway, that's all I got for you. Sayonara, suckers.